What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another live stream. Getting my reps in. Getting my reps in. So this live stream is about the critic. Okay, I'm unsure if you've ever experienced this. There's a critic that lives in my head that pummels me on a regular basis. It's actually kind of interesting how much my inner critic likes to beat me up. So I want to talk more about that. And this came up for me in a session that I had with one of the men that I'm working with. And I find this that anytime someone's going through a transition or has gone through something um, that rocks them, that shakes their core, that challenges who they thought they are, who they thought they were, the critic can be the loudest that I'm finding for myself, and that I'm also finding for people that I work with. So I wanna start or share this quote that came up when I was doing just some notes on this conversation. And critics have a job to do. They do not criticize you without reason. That's Abhishek Bachchan. This quote summed it up perfectly for me because as I was working with this man and helping him with his inner critic, I went back to some things that I used to help me with my inner critic when it can be really, when my inner critic can get pretty freaking vicious. So I've had to learn and work and figure out ways to take that message, take the venom out of out of what I'm hearing from the critic, and be able to shift it in a way that I can benefit from what the message is that the critic is saying. So in this video, in this live stream, I'm going to present you with three different questions that you can ask yourself to really figure out, not figure out, far from figure out, but really start to have your critic be your ally instead of your adversary. So uh, I wanna ask a couple questions before we dive in. So if you're watching this live, thank you, welcome. If you're watching this on the replay, you can put this in the chat, or you can grab a notepad and write these questions down for yourself in a journal or on a piece of paper. So the first question I have for you is, how are you at getting criticism? How are you at taking criticism? One of the things that is probably one of the hardest things that people get to do, aside from public speaking, is actually taking criticism. Most of I like to study communication, so I've worked at ways of being able to give feedback, especially as a yoga teacher, training facilitator, like being able to offer feedback that's not like you did a horrible job, but more about like, hey, listen, I think you can improve on this. So I've learned how I can provide feedback and criticism. Criticism, most times people think that this is a negative word, when in reality it's really critiquing or being a critic, being able to look at the areas that someone could advance or improve. So when you think about it, how are you actually coming back to this point about criticism? Most people are piss poor at giving at offering feedback, and have no idea or are quick to criticize, and that criticism is really a projection. It's some things. It could be a lot of things that are going on for them. And projection, again, is far from a bad or right or wrong. It's more that they're projecting some thought that they have in their head about the situation that you're involved in. So they may criticize that, may unconsciously have the intention of steering you away from something that they may perceive is bad for you. So that's the first question. How are you getting criticism? The second question for you is, who is a harsher critic, yourself or someone else? Who's a harsher critic, yourself or someone else? Write that down on a piece of paper, or you can write it down in the comments section. Whatever works for you, it's all good. I'm detached from either way. The reason I'm asking you these questions is I want you to get clear on how you are with criticism before I dive into these three different questions that you can ask yourself. Because I'm as I'm asking and offering these questions, and as you go through and write your responses to them, I'm inviting you to take the perspective of the observer. I want you to take the opportunity to step outside of your situation, and rather than being intimately engaged with your critic, I want you to step away for a second and really just almost like step away from your critic and hear and see what they're saying. And here's why. The first thing that I'm going to have you do, right, when we're thinking about these questions, is the first question that we're going to look at is what is your critic saying. So before you can get into anything and before you can turn your critic from an adversary into an ally, we want to get the data. And this is how I want you to look at this. Um, I know for me, with my critic, I can take what they're saying personally. When in actuality, it's not personal. It's just really they're saying what's on their mind, however they can say it, right? So being able to detach from me and also helping men I work with, people I work with, detach from that critic, I'm able to see and hear what the critic is saying. So one of my critic's favorite things is like, you are a worthless dad. Like, I mean, I'm laughing because it's uncomfortable. And that's like what one of my critics will say, because it's like this is like this thing that's coming up and like this voice, and it gets me to distract myself and gets me into a really bad spiral. So what I had to do, or what I got to do with this, is I started to look at it like, oh, junk, like, what is it? What's the message? It's saying I'm a lousy dad. Okay, that's what the critic is saying, right? And another one is like, you're worthless, you'll never get there, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's what they're saying. So, what is your critic saying? Notice that. Maybe you have something that comes to mind automatically. I want you to write that down. Second question is, do you want to defend what the critic is saying? So, for example, like, you're a lousy dad, or you're never gonna get to this. Like, oh my gosh, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I found for myself that inner critic, I wanted to defend it, and really, I was like, well, hold on, what am I really defending? Right? Is there something? And I started to notice that when I started to really check in with that question, I was like, hold on for a second. Like, well, what am I defending? That I'm this? That I'm a great dad? But like, am I really? Or like, hey, what am I defending? That I'm this? Is it really true? And again, this is a space of non-judgment. It's not about pummeling yourself further. It's about really just taking what the critic is saying as data, being free of get free of being attached to it emotionally, just taking it in as data. Once you take it in as data as far as what they're saying, now you're looking at, are you defending it? If you're defending it, what are you defending? Okay. Now the third piece to this is, once you notice, okay, what am I defending? Now look back at what that critic is saying and check in on what the message is. Okay, in this space of checking in with the message, this requires that, oh, wait, hold on. This is going to mean that you're going to check in. That means when I say check in, to be specific, I'm saying to really get more curious. So in this case, right, like what I did when my critic was like, you're a horrible father, I was like, well, tell me what has you say that, right? Like, okay, well, what's the data on that? And then like it gave me like, I'm gonna have you try something. It's maybe a little bit crazy, and that's okay. I want you to go with it if you're open to it. When you're going through this practice, I want you to maybe even go through a meditation or envision that you're sitting across from your critic. Okay, get as specific as you want. Maybe like you like, you see them, they look a certain way. Maybe it's a reflection of you. I have yet to know. I'm unsure, and again, I'm far from attached. I just want you to really take this opportunity, visualize like this critic is a part on the opposite side of you, like, or maybe on a table, or what have you. Again, this is energetically gets you to detach so you can start to really communicate and really get to the answers and responses. So, what is the message? When we're listening to the critic, to really, this is a key piece in turning them from an adversary to an ally, is to get beyond the message that they're giving. So in this case, when I hear like, hey, you're a horrible father, I see, or I hear that there are spaces where I can improve. If I was listening to this from an emotional place, I'd be like, you know what, you don't know what you're talking about. I'd be all freaking defensive. But if I'm like, all right, well, tell me more. What are some ways I can improve? If the critic is a part of our brain that helps to keep us safe, and our brain has all this data that we're taking in through our senses, then it's only logical that if we're asking our brain to compute a certain response, it's going to give us one. So if we're asking our brain, are we asking this critic, hey, listen, well, what are some ways I can improve? Like, where are the things that I can get better in? What what are they really saying? What's the lesson in the message of this critic? So I want you to just remember these three questions. Like, what is your critic saying? If once you hear what the critic's saying, are you defending it? What's the reason you're defending it? And then the third one is, what is the message? What is this critic really saying? Listen, when it comes down to it, I'm going to wrap this up now. When it comes down to it, the critic is something within you that is going to poke holes and is going to test your conviction and your commitment to what you set out to do. Your critic may be the harshest when you're about to break through. And the thing is if your critic is strong, I'm just here to let you know that means you're close to something big. That means you're shifting something big. The critic is a defense mechanism to keep you safe and to keep you sound and secure. So there's going to be some times you're going to have to go against the critic to really move through and into something new in your life. So if you're willing to shift your view of your critic so it becomes a guide and teacher, a lot of things are going to open up for you. And here's a quote to wrap things up. If you have no critics, you'll likely have no success. Malcolm X. Bless up, everybody. Thanks for listening in. Until next time, I'm working on getting a schedule for these live streams. We'll see how that goes. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll respond back with the comments. And I appreciate you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to all, a good night. Peace.